இன்றைக்கு ஒரு very very special live. இன்றைக்கு நான் ஒரு ஸ்பெஷலான ஒரு லைவ் செய்ய போறேன். நிறைய பேர் கேள்விப்பட்டிருப்பீங்க, அந்த போஸ்ட்ல அவற்ற பேரை பார்த்துருப்பீங்க, தமிழ் டாடி அண்டு. ஸோ வணக்கம் guys, good morning. And so இந்தியா லைஃப் நாங்கள் ஒரு வெரி கேஷுவல் கான்வர்சேஷன். அண்ட் நாங்கள் என்ன செய்ய போறோம் என்றால், நாங்கள் ஏன் இந்த ஒவ்வொரு நாளும் வேர்ட்ஸ் போடுறது, ஏன் இந்த LGBTQ+ சம்பந்தமான வேர்ட்ஸ் போட தொடங்கி நாங்கள் ப்ராயருக்கு, அது எங்களோட நோக்கம் என்ன, ஏன் அதை செய்ய வேணும், வேற ஒரு ஆக்டிவ் அலாய நாங்கள் என்ன செய்யலாம், எங்களோட கம்யூனிட்டிக்கு நாங்கள் எப்படி சப்போர்ட் பண்ணலாம், அதில் பற்றி கதைக்க போறோம். உங்களுக்கு கேள்விகள் இருந்தால் தயவுசெய்து இப்போ உடனே போடாதீங்கோ, கொஞ்சம் பொறுத்து போடுங்கோ. ஸோ நாங்கள் ஒரு எல்லாத்தையும் முதல்ல கதைச்சு முடிச்ச பிறகு இப்போ நீங்கள் போட்டிங்களா நாங்கள் போய் அந்த கேள்வியில பார்த்து உங்களுக்கு பதில் சொல்லலாம். நாங்கள் இங்கிலீஷில் தான் கூடுதலாக கதைக்க போகிறோம். ஸோ ஏதாவது விளங்கலையேண்டா கேளுங்கோ, கொஸ்டின்ஸ்ல கேளுங்கோ, அண்ட் we will answer it. So yeah. So if you guys have any questions, let us know in the comments below. But we will take questions at the end as well. So we won't be answering it in the middle of doing it. So yeah, so I'm excited. I'm very excited. I'm just going to add Thinesh to this, and then let's see. All right, so a bit of a quick intro. Thinesh originally is from Canada, Toronto, and now he's moved to Australia and he lives in Sydney. Hi!
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. I'm excited to have you here as well. It's exciting, and as I said, like, very, very special person. I have so much respect for you, just for reaching out and planning this and doing all this. It's just amazing. And just like everyone else as well, I want to learn more about you as well, find out more about you. So I'm excited. So what time is it there in Sydney at the moment?
Right now it's 8 p.m., 8:03. So
yeah, okay, there's like a 9-hour
exact
difference.
flip side. Yeah.
Literally. But it's good though. I think this way we are covering a lot of people. Maybe the Canadians, it's too early for the Canadian people, I think. But
yeah, it's early in the morning for people in Toronto. I think they're waking up right now. It's about 6 a.m.
Right. Well, I mean, if they do wake up at 6 a.m. on a Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. So I've told them that you are from Toronto but now live in Sydney. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in Toronto in Flemington Park, which is a predominantly Tamil community, Tamil Black and Brown community. Yeah, and then went to high school, went to university, did my undergraduate degree in Toronto at York University, and then I knew I wanted to leave Canada and do my law school somewhere else outside of Canada, so I came to Australia for the beaches.
Amazing. And
yeah, it was supposed to be only for a couple of years. Almost
right.
9 years now. Yeah, so I came here just to study and then never went back.
Right. It's always like that, isn't it? You don't make a plan. You're like, okay, I will see how it goes, and then you end up like 10 years later. You're like, oh, it's been 10 years already.
Yeah, I've stayed for the warm weather.
Yeah, is Australia really amazing? I mean, I don't know anything about Australia.
Yeah, it's good. It depends on what you're looking for. I mean, the weather is definitely nice. The lifestyle is very, very good. In terms of attitude, in comparison to Canada, it's very laid back and similar. The one thing I probably miss about Toronto is the Tamil community. It's a very vibrant and lively community, and so the multiculturalism and identity that exists in Canada is quite different from Australia. So yeah.
Right, because that was going to be my next question. Because how is the Tamil community there? Is there a Tamil community as it is in Toronto, for example?
Yeah, there's definitely a Tamil community here, and there's lots of things going on within the Tamil community here. One thing that I've noticed myself having experienced the Tamil community in Toronto and here is that how Tamil people identify is quite different, or how they express that identity is quite different. So I think in Toronto, a lot of Tamil people have been able to navigate different spaces all at once. So,
Mhm.
I don't feel uh, uncomfortable expressing my Tamilness in Canadian society, walking around in the street. Like I can wear a dhoti or kurta, whatever, and it's fine. Whereas in
Yeah.
Australia, there's much more apprehension about it. And so the Tamil people I've met here are usually on one of two sides. The first being they're very insular within the Tamil community, or completely separate and just kind of very well assimilated into what is Australianness.
Right, right. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah, because I think for me, as someone from London, so I only know how Tamil people are in Germany and then in London.
Mm,
Um, Whenever I meet people from like Toronto, like Canada, they're like, "Oh my God, we are it," and it's so Tamil, but then also it's very like it's a mix of cultures and everything's embraced. And I'm like, I find that maybe London. I hope the London people don't hear me and kill me, but
yeah.
I always think like as a Londoner, I feel like we have the vibrancy and we have the mix of cultures as well, but maybe not as much as it is in Toronto, for example. I think Toronto is
Mm,
just a bigger and bolder, and here there are still reservations, and the British side comes in where everyone's just so polite and very
yeah.
still reserved, as much as they're open-minded as well. So
I think
yeah, and then
Australia is the
Australia,
same.
I
Australia is the
really,
same. Yeah, so I think people here are a lot more reserved, and they consider
yeah,
Tamil people in Toronto rowdies. So
really, oh,
yeah,
that's
I get that comment a lot.
right, right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think my sister and I, we were like, oh my God, because I've been to Canada once, but I was at 7. I don't remember anything. And I
Mm,
just remember the houses were big and everyone's just like so cool. And that's it. And I was living in Germany at the time in a small village. So for me, I was like, oh my God, Canada's amazing. But
yeah.
then when I talk to my friends who've been to Canada, they have relatives in Canada, they're like, are you sure? Scarborough? No. No. And I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
why? They have a different opinion about that. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. But
No,
I
we
guess like,
always
yeah,
represent Scarborough.
right.
Yeah.
Amazing. So my first question to you,
Yeah.
why? So why did you think that, you knew about me, I mean the Tamil channel, and why did you think, let's just get together and do this collaboration and post words related to LGBT?
Mm. I think firstly, it was probably following your account and seeing the incredible work that you were doing for the Tamil community, and specifically Tamil youth, and teaching them Tamil words in a very accessible way, which is through Instagram. Seeing that, I knew that there was a really nice platform to kind of speak to the Tamil community about LGBT issues. Um, I think for me personally, and why I approached you to do this was because I think it came from a place of personal struggle.
Mhm.
Having grown up in a predominantly Tamil community with Tamil friends, there's like a particular way of being Tamil, and I think growing up kind of was a full participant in what comes with being Tamil in Toronto. And as a result, the amount of queer visibility within that community is non-existent, or at least it was
Right.
at the time that I was growing up. Um, this was exacerbated by being heavily involved in the Tamil Christian community as well, which is two different conservative reserved communities coming together. And I think as a result, I think I had internalized the idea that being queer was a Western thing. Um,
Right.
and so as a result, I didn't recognize the queerness within myself because I hadn't necessarily found the space or the time or the
Mhm.
space or the time to explore it. Um, I think once I started to come to terms and started to embrace my queerness after moving to Australia, I started to feel more and more disconnected from my Tamil identity and my community that I had grown up with.
Mhm.
Um, so for a long time, it was very touch and go, especially being here in Australia, which has its own ideas around identity and Tamilness. And I
Mhm.
wanted to kind of reconcile, I think, like the two lives that I was living, and try to merge them into one, which required to speak to my family about what was going on with my life.
Mhm.
Uh, but when I was finally ready to speak to my family, I didn't have the words to do so. I speak
Right.
Tamil, but not to the extent where I can have nuanced conversations about these kinds of topics. And so I didn't
Mhm.
know the right words and didn't have the language to fully express myself in Tamil. And as a result, those conversations were really challenging.
Yeah, yeah. I think I have a question. You said, the whole being Tamil, the Tamilness in Toronto.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know if I understand it properly. So, what does that entail? Like being Tamil in Toronto? Is it more like, being Tamil culturally, and it's like you guys being versus the other cultures that are there as well? Or like, how is it?
I think Humbleness is defined in a lot of different ways depending on who you speak to. I
Hmm.
think, some people will talk about Tamil boys and brown boys generally as Drake wannabes, right? And so, in some regards, if you're not expressing your masculinity or yourself in that kind of way, you're considered white or not Tamil, right? And if you're listening to something
Hmm.
that's not hip hop or R&B, then you're not Tamil, and that has nothing to do with actually being Tamil. You could still be listening
Yeah.
to Ghana music and watching Tamil movies and whatever else. But I think we've grown up with a very particular evolution of the Tamil community in Toronto, and as a result, people think one, being queer is not a Tamil thing because we
Yeah.
haven't seen it loudly expressed before. And that's partly because of the Tamil community and how they discuss these kinds of issues. If
Yeah.
something like this comes up, people keep it very hush hush and within the family and don't speak about it publicly. And so that uh, you're not aware of the different facets of Tamil people that exist in the community.
Mhm. That's very true. That's very true. I think we see that in a very superficial way as well, right? Like my parents, the only thing that concerns them is that Canadian Tamils are very different to the London Tamils, and then certain parts of Germany they're very different. And even then, it's like they've got the whole Ur thing going on, like these people from this town they act like this, they speak like this,
Mm,
and that's it. But what it means to be Tamil, I feel like the second generation kids, like our generation, we never had the. I mean, up until I find this year is just a year of changes anyway. But up until
mm,
this year, I never personally even explored my own identity, like of who I am. It's either you're Tamil or you're not, and
mm,
you've got this coconut being, I don't know, the perfect Tamil or the freshie, and that's
yeah.
it. And
Mm.
nothing in between, and it's not a fluid thing. And yeah, I think yeah, I can't even imagine like I don't know having a casual conversation about this, or even I think the lack of what is it oh god, my English um is the people to look up to. We don't have anyone in the Tamil community that we can look up to and say, okay, so they're like this and they could be queer and that's normal, and we don't have that.
Mm.
And then having to figure that out as well, right? It's very complicated.
Yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
I think the other thing I would probably want to add to that was that it's also uh, this is the benefit of Instagram and social media because as a Tamil person, specifically a Ula Tamil person, we don't necessarily have institutions and spaces to express ourselves in, right? To tie ourselves to. And so it's been really great to see the Tamil community really become active on Instagram and connect that way. And it
Mhm.
provides us with the opportunity to learn about language, learn about culture, learn about history, learn about politics, and engage with each other and connect. Like you and I are only speaking because we connected with each other on Instagram, and a lot of
Literally.
my Tamil friends now have all come through Instagram, which is really, really fascinating and great to see.
It is honestly, it's amazing because I think, yeah, I always think like if it wasn't for Tamil or me being Tamil and identifying myself as Tamil, I wouldn't have made any of these connections. And like
Mm.
we live in London, and again in London as well, I wouldn't be going out there randomly chatting someone up and being like, hey, you're Tamil, let's talk about this. But because we've got social media, it's honestly amazing that we can address these issues and so many different things as well, right? Like
Mm.
and talk about it openly, and the platform is there, and that's great. Um, and also the importance of language, I think I just want to add as well. A lot of people that have, well, since starting the whole Pride, Tamil Pride this month, they've said whoa, the words exist in English already. Why don't you just use that? You could just say lesbian and people would know what you're talking about. Now you're introducing a new word and confusing everyone. Why? And I always say, like, for a language to evolve and sustain, it needs to adapt and change and advance as well. And you need to update the vocabulary as well. And, you know, not just LGBT related, but also Black Lives related as well. A lot of the words we don't know. We don't know the word for stereotype, or we don't know the word for prejudice. And we need to actively talk about it because we don't talk about these issues, you know, and it's a cultural thing. We don't talk about it, so we don't know the word, and that's it. No one cares about it. And then we just deal with the nice things and all the nice flowery things and, you know, all the nice stuff. And it's I think it's fine if we don't know the words, because a lot of the words I learned this month, thanks to you, honestly. And I think it's just like actively using the words now that we know it, and actually making use of the words and incorporating it into our daily language, and actually saying, you know, I'm going to have a conversation with my parents and let's talk about this actually. Because if it wasn't for these words, this is just my personal experience. I've had so many conversations with my parents, and you know, my mom literally, like, now she'd be like, vandital, inna kadhikka porayippa. But it's been such an active conversation. It's become a joke, but it's also very important. I'm very adamant about it. Because then I would ask her, you know, do you know what word you would use? What word would you have used? And for example, words like, I don't know, like racism, right? The word we would use is actually not the word racism itself, but we would use the word hatred, because we only know the word hatred in regards to racism and things like that, right? Like growing up in Germany. And that's why I think it's very important to explore and be, you know, exposed to all these words. Now, this brings me to the next question. Who gets to decide what word we use? For example, the word lesbian or gay or non-binary. Who chooses these words? And how did you come up with a list of words and decided, okay, these are the words we're going to post on Pride?
Yeah, so I think the best guiding principle is always to consult with members of that community as to what the terms are for referring to them. So I never think it's appropriate for us to self-impose a term on another community. And I think we see it a lot in a lot of other ways. For example, you know, when you talk about queer, let's talk about the actual LGBT terms, right? Which is the project that we're working on. Like I had in our initial post for Pyramid, we had anticipated that people will have different terms that they resonate with and they may not identify with the words that we use. And because this is a project of collating of various words that a number of different communities use, we knew that it would be an evolving space and that one term might work for some lesbians or gay guys or non-binary people whilst others wouldn't. And even in myself using the word queer, this is considered a derogatory term by like a lot of older LGBT people. But you know, we have a lot of younger people have reappropriated it and reclaimed it. It used to be a slur, but now it's a term of empowerment. And I think in that way, as a result, I would never go out and call someone queer unless I knew 100% that they would be okay with that term. And I think in that regard, consultation with the person that you're speaking to or referring to is the best way to approach it.
Very true, very true. I think now that we have also a lot of people, you know, are coming out and saying, you know, I am like non-binary, for example. That's a new concept for a lot of Tamil people. I mean, generally for people as well. And, you know, for me as well, it's a new concept. And it's one of those things where you need to understand the difference between sex, gender, and sexual orientation. And a lot of people don't have the background. And, you know, in that case, it's always good to not assume, but ask. And you wouldn't exactly, you know, like, yes, in a binary world, it's very easy. You would just categorize people into A and B, and that's it. And you name A like this, B like this, and ask. But I think now that the changes are happening, that we are progressing as a community, it's great that, you know, you have a mouth, use it to ask the right questions to the right people, and be respectful. I think that's the important part, isn't it? Like, rather than using words that you're not sure about, you can always ask the people. And as you've said, like one word might agree with one group of people and another word might not. And, you know, it's not right and wrong, I think. It's just about what people prefer to use and what they personally identify themselves as. But also, I think as Tamil people, we've got this unique situation where Tamils live all over the world.
Yeah.
So we locality wise, we are not located in one place. So there is a lot of cultural differences we have to face, and language wise as well. The Tamil that we speak, for example, in South Africa is different to in Chennai, and then Jaffna, and then Australia, for example, as well, right? And then you've got the
Yeah.
diaspora Tamil kids who speak a very different Tamil. And in that case, I think it's culturally and politically as well. I think very important that we are accurate and we ask the people what they like to use wherever they are, because one word that might work in Chennai, for example, might not work in Jaffna, because culturally very different places, even though proximity wise they're very close together. And then, of
Yeah.
course, we are talking about like Toronto and London, for example. Culturally different words, even in English, might be different or appropriate to use. And it's the way we use it as well, right? I have another question. So, do you think so? This is a question I got a lot when I started posting the words from a lot of heterosexual cis people, and they, the first opposition was like, "Oh, but you can't decide." And I said, "Yes, I know," and I didn't decide the word. But for them, they were like, "No, people can't just decide." Like someone who's got like a Tamil degree in like I don't know, like I don't know, like ancient words or something, should be using it. And for most of the questions, I ignored them because I don't have the energy for this. But
Yeah.
if we could say to like, I'm just gonna say like two heterosexual people, I always think it's none of your business, first of all. But what would you say? Like, if like let's say a heterosexual person, asks like, but who gets to, you don't get to choose the words just because you're part of the community, because Tamil doesn't belong to you. Tamil is a language, and I think we all have a say in it. Like,
Yeah.
would you say anything to them?
I think in statements like that, you completely miss the notion that Tamil as a language has never evolved because there was a committee deciding what is going to count as Tamil and what is not going to count as Tamil.
Yeah.
This idea that an academic in a university is going to determine that, I think, is absurd. And I think the reality is a lot of linguistics professors and academics are studying the history and the evolution of Tamil and various other languages because they evolve within community. They don't evolve within academic institutions. I'm sure they have an influence of how terms will be used, but that's mirroring what is actually going on in the community.
Right.
So that's probably what my response would be. I think evolution
Yeah.
is constantly in flux, and I don't like the idea of a gatekeeping language where people in an ivory tower are determining who gets to say what.
Yes. Very well said. I think I agree with you as well on that, 100%. And I think it goes back to understanding how language evolves as well. I always tell people like whenever they say, "Oh, but it doesn't say it like this in Tolhopium," and I'm like, "Yes, but Tolhopium is a grammar book that was compiled
Mm,
from the language that was already out there. So people started to learn to speak Tamil first before they sat down and said, actually, let's write this down. How do we speak? How do we use grammatical rules and stuff? No one found a magic book and then decided, oh, this is how we're going to speak Tamil, right? And it's the
yeah.
same as with these new words as well. I think a lot of these words they come from the community who are using it actively as well, and
Mm,
it's not up to anyone to say, yeah, you can't say that, you can't say that, or this is right, this is wrong. If an individual, like I think one of the words that was very controversial for a lot of people was the word nange. Now, nange is
mm,
a beautiful Tamil word. I love it. And, like historically, traditionally, it was used for like, a woman, but not just any woman. And this is where it gets interesting because nange was not just used for any woman, but she was considered a beautiful woman. But
mm,
also, I think, when we're looking at caste and stuff, upper caste women. So that's where it gets political. And I think a lot of people who had a problem with the word nange were heterosexual cis men. And I'm like, you're not even the woman, so I don't understand why it affects you. But then also, I had a woman, a heterosexual woman, who messaged me saying, this was one of the first posts. She disagreed with it, and she said, I don't want to be associated with those people. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, that word doesn't belong to you. And,
mm,
like a lot of people in the comments where they were making fun of it. Oh, but in this song, they were saying nange, blah, blah, blah. Does that mean a lesbian woman? And, the problem wasn't how the word was used. But my problem with that was the fact that they thought it was derogatory if it was used to mean a lesbian
Yeah.
woman. You know what? Because in my head I was thinking, yeah, but why can't it mean a lesbian woman? The meaning
Mm.
doesn't change because they're still referring to a woman. But for them,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, oh, a lesbian woman. And I was like, that's very immature, first of all. And you have no, sense of language and how it evolves and how it's used. Especially as a Tamil speaker, I think everyone knows, right? Like one word has 1,000 meanings. So why
Yeah.
can you then be so like, oh, I'm the Tamil grammar police or I'm the Tamil language police? And I find it very comical, honestly. But, it's one of those things where, words that can be, changed, like the meaning can change over the years. And for me, I always find like, I don't understand why you have such a big problem with that word. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
there are so many new words out there. And my example always is like, for example, the word for the USB stick is virali.
Yeah.
And literally, I'm like, wait, someone actually came up with that word, and you guys are okay with that? And I
Mm.
find it a funny word. I don't want to use it, but you know what?
Mm.
Everyone seems fine with that. But then they have a problem using a word that is already existing for something that's actually, it makes perfect sense to use it.
Mm.
Whether a lesbian woman wants to use it or not, that's her problem. But I
Mm.
think as heterosexual people, I don't think it's our right to actually say no, you can't say that, you can't say that. I don't think it's our place at all, right?
100%. And I think the other thing to acknowledge also is that the words that we use, even in Tamil, is also contextual as to how we use it. And it comes down to the environment and the particular social situation that you're in. A lot of our moms called our dad Appa as well. Obviously, they
Right.
don't actually literally mean father, right?
Yeah.
But this is how different, like, words that are familiar to all of us take on different meanings depending on the context that you're in.
Mm. No, that's very true. Wow, that's a very good example, actually. Because as you said, I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
some of them do that,
Yeah.
Yeah, again, yeah, as you said, it context makes a big difference. Um, Amazing. Okay, so another question.
Mm.
Um, what are the next steps? So I guess like my question is for allies, people who want to, a lot of people have reached out to us now since posting these words, and they are from the heterosexual community where they're like, you know what? Oh my God, we want to support and we want to do whatever we can, but we don't know what to do and we don't know what to say. So what are things we could do as Tamil people to support our Tamil LGBTQ plus community? But also generally, I think, regardless of what area of work we are in, whatever we do, what is it that we can do, like as a Tamil individual, to support the cause, to make the little changes in our lives and in other people's lives to educate
Mm.
us and everyone else.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you were there, but yesterday, Pearl, the People for Equality and
Oh
Relief in
yeah.
Lanka, actually ran a session on queerness, and
Mhm.
it was featuring Gauri Koneswaran, Ram Paramanathan, and Abrami Balachandran. And
Yeah.
they had done a really good summary of stepping out, what people need to remember, and specifically what Tamil people need to remember.
Mhm.
And I guess the first thing being is that, ally is not just a noun, it's a verb and it requires actions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so I was thinking about that regarding our post because we were like, oh, noun. And we should have noted that also is a verb, and it's constant active participation. I think during Black Lives Matter this past couple of months, we've seen a lot of performative allyship where people will post a black square and then kick their feet back and relax, and
Yeah.
it doesn't end there. It's a constant challenge where every day people need to show up for the people in their community. The second thing I would probably say, again, borrowing from Pearl, is uh, be mindful of the gendered language that we're using. So instead of saying things like ladies and gentlemen, we can say welcome everyone. And in this regard, I think what's been interesting is we also received DMs about discussing pronouns, which we'll eventually do. And so asking what people's pronouns are, rather than just assuming, I think is really, really
Mm.
helpful. And in that regard, whether we're dealing with LGBT people or not, or whether we are in queer or not, we can share our own pronouns in non-LGBT context. So, my name is Thinesh and my preferred pronouns are he, him, his. One practical way that everyone can do that is if you're working in a corporate environment and you have an email signature, in your email signature, you can write preferred pronouns he, him, her, he, him, his, or she, her, etc. And so that's a really easy, simple way for you to communicate to others. These are what my preferred pronouns are, and also allows other people in your organization who are non-binary or trans to feel comfortable expressing what their pronouns are as well. And the other ancillary benefit of this is people who are white don't ever know what my gender is because they're not familiar with the name Thinesh. So I often get Miss
Right.
Thinesh a lot. So having my
Really?
so then having my pronoun there also communicates to them that, I'm a dude. The other
Yeah.
thing that's really important, I think, as well is, and we've seen a lot more of this in this past year and specifically these past few months, but challenging homophobic and transphobic remarks and uh, speaking out on these issues. I think one thing that has really given me a lot of hope this year, within the Tamil community context, is that for a long time I never heard anyone discussing any queer issues on a much more localized level. I think there's a couple of LGBT organizations, South Asian LGBT organizations that existed in Toronto that held space for Tamil people. But outside of that LGBT context, I would never hear anyone discussing it. And now I see people talking about this all the time. And so and I think in that regard, we just need to extrapolate those conversations further and make sure that we're talking about it with our friends, we're talking about it with our cousins, we're talking about it with our families, because all the labor cannot be placed on queer people and trans people to make the community safe for them, right? Like true allyship requires our friends and our family and our cousins, everyone to show up for us, to make it welcoming for us. So normalizing these conversations, I think it's really, really important. And I think probably the last thing I would say is there are a lot of amazing Tamil people, queer Tamil people doing great things within the community in a lot of different spaces, whether it's in politics, whether it's in social justice, in science, geography, whatever you want to talk about. And I think it's important that mainstream Tamil media celebrates these people. It can't be just
Yeah.
LGBT people uplifting amazing Tamil people doing great work. I think it's really important for our cis hetero friends to also be celebrating these people and sharing the amazing work in Ulaga Tamilar and all these Tamil newspapers. I think it's really sad when I think it's really sad when I see amazing Tamil people doing queer Tamil people doing great things, but they get very little acknowledgement or recognition from the wider Tamil community. Celebrating these people will counter the perceptions that a lot of older Tamil people have about what it means to be queer and how queer people exist in society. In some of the conversations I had with people, Tamil parents and uncles and aunties had this idea that queer people are criminals who live on the fringes of society. And this is a very old school idea around what it means to be LGBT. And so
Yeah.
to challenge that, we need to counter those narratives that they have in their heads with positive representations. And in platforms and media that our parents access and our cousins access and the wider Tamil community access it. Like it's all well and good for us to talk about it on Instagram and create a woke Tamil youth or community, but it's important for our parents to come on board as well. And the only way we can bring them on board is by speaking about amazing Tamil queer people on the platforms that they access.
Definitely, definitely. I think one thing I've come across a lot, like in the last month as well, is the fact that so many people are very surprised. So after every live I've done with people, I'll get a bunch of DMs from people, and a lot of them will be like, oh my God, they were really nice actually. Like, and they're surprised. And I'm like, what do you mean? And that's the first time I heard, because I think, when again, I always say I've been living in a small bubble where everything's perfect, everyone's lovely. And I
Mm,
think I've always just assumed, oh, yes, like, I've never experienced anyone abusing anyone who was not heterosexual, who was queer. So for me, everyone is nice. No one would do anything. There is no hate crime. And, that's the kind of world I live in. And
mm,
when I get comments from people like that, and it's all well meaning, but that's when I realize actually, hold up, they're saying that because all of a sudden they thought otherwise. And it's a
mm,
surprise to them. And it's the way they say it as well. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? Like, what do you actually mean? Like, you thought they weren't? Like, why would you think that? But it's literally perception. Like, one thing I always realize as well is it's one of those things where, for example, I'm going to say like cis gay men, they're
mm,
perceived as, oh, they're perverted. Or if it's a lesbian woman, just being a woman, a Tamil woman, she's overly sexualized. And, they
yeah,
wouldn't treat a heterosexual woman like that, or they wouldn't make like comment like that or write a specific, they wouldn't use specific words like that, but they think they're entitled to do that because that's the perception they have. But then when
mm,
they see actually, again, it's one of those things where they lack exposure as well, right? Like they see something on me in media and they're like, oh yeah, this is how they are in a movie, and that's it. That's how everyone must be, stereotyping everyone. And then when they
mm,
actually come across someone, they're like, oh wait, they're just like me, and and they realize that, oh okay, so I'm just stereotyping everyone. And I think that takes time, and we need to expose more people, and be active as well in that. And it takes a lot of work. I'm not going to lie, but yeah, that's
mm,
that's one thing that surprised me honestly. And I was like, wait, like really? And for a lot of Tamil people who follow the Tamil channel, for example, it was the first time that they actually saw on live someone from the Tamil queer community actually talking. And
mm,
they would have otherwise never seen it. And you would think, but what do you mean? But again, I'm privileged because I live in London. I come across a lot of people from all sorts of places and all sorts of ways and living and stuff like that. But we also have Tamil people living in suburbs where they don't have contact to other Tamil people, right? So
yeah,
I think, yeah, that's one thing I realized as well. And I was like, ooh, really? And, I can't just say, oh, you're just being ignorant. But I guess when they do come forward and voice this, you can then have the conversation with them and actually educate them more as well, right? But as you've said as well, it is not the job or responsibility of the Tamil queer community at all. I don't think
mm,
so. I used to think that. I'm not gonna lie. I used to think that, and my view always was like, it's not like, oh, it's their job, not mine. But it was more like, oh, I don't think I can because I'm not part of the community, so I have no rights to. So they
mm,
should. But during the lives of people and talking to a lot of people in the Tamil queer community, they've always voiced the same thing again and again. Why can't you? Just
mm,
because you think just because you identify yourself as a cis heterosexual woman,
mm,
doesn't mean you can't speak up for a lesbian Tamil woman. Why not? Why can't you
yeah,
speak up for a non-binary Tamil person? And that's when it clicked, and I was like, oh wow! And again, about active allyship as well, right? Like it's contributing, actually making the difference by speaking up and making the little changes. Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna admit it. Like I've been one of the people who was always taking a back seat. Like you post something and you're like, there we go, done for the day. Well done. Like, you know
mm,
what I mean? But it is like actually, signing that petition or changing, as you've said, like it's a little thing. It doesn't take you a minute to change and add like preferred pronoun and add your preferred pronoun in your signature or on your Instagram. I'm seeing it more on Instagram profiles as well, where people are adding it. I'm going to actually
yeah,
do that after the live and actually
yeah,
change that as well. Actually make the active contribution and bring about the change
mm,
to support our community.
100%. And I think
Mm,
the other thing I would probably add to that is that you have to use the privilege that you have to make these spaces safe. Like a lot of the times, Tamil queer people, it's not safe for them to actually come out or be public within the Tamil community about their queerness. Some people will choose
mm,
never to come out, right? And that's fine, and there should be no obligation to do so. But for the people that do want to come out, or be actively involved as a queer person in the Tamil community, it needs to be safe for them to do so. And the only way it can be safe is when everyone is on board and uses their privilege to make these safe spaces accessible.
Definitely, definitely. I agree with you 100% on that as well. Definitely. And in terms of future projects, so if anyone was interested in collaborating with you, would you be open to that?
Yeah, of course, 100%.
Yeah, cool,
I
cool.
think like the way I thought about it and the reason I reached out to you was because I like had put myself out there as a Tamil queer person, and as a result connected with so many other people who are also Tamil and queer, and they aren't necessarily out. And because I live in a very privileged kind of position, it's important for all of us to speak up on these issues when we have the opportunity to do so. So I'm definitely open to more collaborations to increase visibility of the queer community.
Mm. Amazing, amazing. Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm excited to be working with you again as well in the future, definitely. And I think as an individual, I think, I always say like my contribution from now on is going to be very active as well. And just because Pride Month is over doesn't mean we forget about Pride LGBTQ plus issues and we just move on to the next thing. But actually make it part of daily conversation. Um, like for me, my thing was I've managed to talk to my parents about this. With my sisters, I always talk about it. It's not an issue because they're all younger than me. They already know about this. They're very accepting of it. For my parents, it's a whole new thing, right? So talking to them
Mm,
in Tamil about it, and actually, I'm very proud to say this because I wish everyone did the same thing at home as well, where, they educate their parents and not just dismiss them saying, oh, but they're from the old generation, they won't get it. They will get it if you actually explain it in the right way. And,
mm,
expose them to other people from the Tamil queer community and actually say, look at them, look, they're doing this, they've done that, and, they're just like me as well. And normalizing everything. And for me, now, if you talk to my dad, he can explain to you the different in Tamil, using Tamil words, the difference between, for example, a trans woman and a lesbian woman. Because before, for them, it all seemed the same. And they didn't even
mm,
know the difference between sex, gender, and sexual orientation. So
yeah.
that's how you bring about the change. Because my mom asked me yesterday, oh, do you have a list of the words in Tamil? And I was like, why do you need that? And then she was, oh, I'm going to talk to my friends about it. And I'm like, honestly, well done. Like, this is how you should do it. This is like one person talking to another person. Once the ball gets rolling, that's how
Mm.
change happens, right?
And it's great that you mentioned that because like one person that is one of my friends, she had posted one of the words that we had shared on our Instagram, and she was just talking, she's a Tamil doctor, right? And she was talking about how beneficial it is for her to have access to these words that she can now
Right.
use in her practice as a health practitioner. And similarly, our parents are in a lot of positions, various leadership positions, whether it's within the medical community or otherwise, where they have a lot
Hmm.
of contact with a large variety of Tamil people. And equipping our parents and leaders within our community with the language to speak about these issues again has a flow-on effect where it just benefits the wider community.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yes, amazing. I think honestly, like this June month, I've learned so much, and I think thanks to lockdown as well, that a lot of us have had the opportunity to actually sit back and relax, and I mean, sorry, not relax, reflect on things we see online. Like
Yeah.
normally, I think if we have to see with live, like we would just scroll through it quickly, give it a like, double tap, and then move on. But because we've got so much time as well, I think a lot more people have had the opportunity to actually sit there and actually sign that petition and make the change and look things up. And I think,
Mm.
yeah, it's great. So we need to keep this up and actually get people involved in this more as well. And as I've said as well to people, like I've put out a story earlier as well, if anyone is from the Tamil LGBTQ plus community, if you would like to work on collaboration and stuff, drop us a DM and we would love to work with you. And it's just it's I think it's just, I always say, like, I always bring it back to Tamil anyway, because I'm very proud to be Tamil. And I
Mm.
can't say that I've always felt this proud. For the longest time of my life, being Tamil was like a questionable thing and I wasn't sure where I fit. But now I always see it as, regardless of where you live, if you're Tamil, you're Tamil. You can connect with another
Yeah.
Tamil person, regardless of what dialect they speak, or whoever they are, you can still communicate with them. And
100%.
that's a blessing in itself, right?
100%. And it's really exciting
Definitely.
to see the Tamil community thrive in this way, where we're connecting with
Mhm.
different people all around the world. Like someone that I'm friends with here in Sydney. So it's cool to see all of us connect this way.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to bring up one last question. So this is something you brought up to me. So I was asking people to participate in my lives, and then you asked me, have you asked this person? Have you asked that person? And then you said, it's very important to be inclusive and represent all the Tamil people within the Tamil queer community. And I reflected and I
Mm.
looked back on the videos and I realized, oh my God, that's very true. And it happened to be that a lot of the people that were on my life were cis gay Tamil men, and
Yes.
I think it's also not just in my life, it's very reflective of our lives as well, that we still see things in very binary ways, and we just see, I'm just going to say, like, the gay Tamil man and the lesbian Tamil woman, and that's it, and nothing or
Mm.
no one else in between. And I just wanted to ask you as well, like, to expand a bit more on, we really, like, honestly be open and inclusive, and not just pick the how can I say, like, the mostly represented type of people, right? Like,
Mm.
it's very I would say, like, even in mainstream media, when we talk about LGBTQ plus things, the first person that comes to your mind would be like a gay Tamil man, and that's like
Mm.
your safe bet. That's who you go with. But then, even myself, like, I still don't know everything, right? Like, that's there within the LGBTQ plus community, who is there, and who we have to represent. And when you asked me that question, it was like, I was like, literally, shit. Honestly, yes, I haven't, like, like, the lives, I never thought about it, because I thought, okay, who can I fit in? And I was thinking about the schedules and stuff, but I literally completely overlooked that part. And
Mm.
that's why I thought, yeah, I asked you this: why is it important that, if we use the life as an example, why we actually
Mm.
use, make use of other people and everyone, and reflect everyone within our community as well.
Yeah, I think in at least in the Western LGBT movement, gay men have taken a lot of airtime, and you're seeing now, obviously, there's more discussion happening around trans issues within the broader queer community. But for a long time, that did not exist, and the focus solely became marriage equality at the expense of other issues facing different members of the community. And this also has to do with sexism and misogyny, where men's voices just get amplified over and over and over again. And the reality is all of our experiences are very, very different. So like, I've heard of stories, like, there's queer groups, LGBTI groups in Jaffna as well, right? And trans people and gay men are able to access it a lot more than lesbian women can, because of safety concerns, right? And just the kind of standards that exist for how men and women operate in these communities. And
Yeah,
so I think it's important that um, we don't repeat those problems within the broader Tamil queer movement, where only queer men continually take up the airspace talking about the issues. Whilst it is important to have these voices, it's also important to represent and reflect on a myriad of experiences, and that includes lesbians, genderqueer, non-binary, trans people, asexual people, and so on. And then this is further intersected by caste and class and ability, because everyone has very different experiences with a variety of different challenges. And I think it's very important for all of us to uplift and amplify the most marginalized within our communities.
yeah. Very nice. Honestly, yes. That's very true. That's very true. And I think, again, yeah, we have to actively actually make the changes as well, isn't it? Like, I've noticed that as well from mine. So next time I will be doing lives and stuff, I'll be very mindful, and I will try to be a lot more inclusive. And actually, not just like stop by just saying it, but actually, like, reach out to the right people and ask for advice. And like, there is, like, for example, like, next time I would know, I could ask you, and you would know someone else who would know someone else, and that way, like, just
Mm.
widen our net people and literally just represent. I think being Tamil is a very unique identity, historically, politically. And I think, we are very, how can I say, we are in a position where we can and where we should actually represent everyone in our community and, make the most of it. Because I always say, like, as a heterosexual person, you may not be able to understand it, but you don't have to understand. You don't have to understand why someone is gay, or you don't, because a lot of people I think are preoccupied with the whole, but I don't know how this works. And I'm like, you don't need to know how it works. All we ask of you is just support, right? Like, and for me, it always goes, like, literally goes to the very basic level of basic human rights. Um, that's all it is. Like, just treat everyone with respect and give everyone their rights and treat them. This is the thing, it's all about respect as well. In Tamil culture, we care so much about Maryada. And I'm like, that's the Maryada. They asked you to give to everyone and treat everyone with respect, because I think Tamil people take so much pride in being Tamil and their culture and everything. And I was like, but in Tamil culture, it was never a thing to degrade someone or look down on someone. And, it's something that happened over the years because of external influences and, a thousand reasons. But we don't need to just keep doing it just because it's Tamil culture. And, I was talking to someone yesterday as well. And, we were talking about the fact that, people say, oh, yeah, Tamil culture. But actually, Tamil culture has been changing a lot. It's not what it was 100 years ago. Yet our parents are, stuck in this, time capsule in the 80s. And they expect us to still stick to the customs and stuff. And I'm like, but that's not true. So we just need to, I think, the young people, the young generation needs to literally take our culture and our values into our own hands and actually say, no, but this is how we want to do it. And this is the new Tamil culture. And our parents have to go along with it. They don't have to. They can live their own culture. You know what I mean? But I think we have to stop feeling like, oh, we have to be polite and we have to follow our parents. I don't want to be actually, no, it's not being disrespectful when you're actually standing up for yourself and for your fellow human beings, right?
100%. And I think another way we can do that, just to make sure it's more of a permanent change, is that, a lot of us were involved and are involved in Tamil student associations within our universities and colleges and various community groups like TYO and so on. I think it's important that we have queer voices represented in the leadership and the executive teams, whether it's queer women, queer men, trans people, because that's going to spark the change. They're the ones who are going to carry on those leadership experiences into those respective communities. And chances are those people will continue being leaders within those communities as they grow older. And so when you have that kind of representation, it makes the Tamil community much more equitable for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so thank you so much for all your answers. Honestly, it's been great. What I'm going to do is, before we finish, I've just turned comments back on. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. தமிழ்ல கேட்கறேன்னா கேட்கல, நாங்க தமிழ்லயும் வந்து பதில் சொல்லுவோம். So if you have any questions, feel free to ask Thinesh or myself, and we will try to ask once again. Okay. All right, I can't see any questions. Let's see. So someone's just commented, for people talking about misogyny, is it not patriarchal to appropriate terms for gay men or lesbian?
I'm not sure if I understand that question.
Yeah, I don't think I understand the question as well. Could you please expand on that? Please. Unless it was a previous comment regards something else. Right. So Mahilven and Mahilin.
It's interesting in terms of these terms specifically, because we came to know about it through our initial post for Nambi Nange. And my understanding is that these terms have emerged through the community in the last, I don't know how long it's been, but they almost seem like the equivalent of gay within the Tamil context, because gay originally meant, a happy person or to be happy. And so Magavan and Magalini have kind of taken that meaning on and adopted it for the Tamil community. I don't know if
Mhm.
I'm the best person to speak on the emergence of that term, though, because I don't know the linguistic history of that or the etymology of that. I don't know if you can.
Yeah. Yes, I think because I've read an article, I'm not sure what. I think maybe it was like Paul Pudume on one of the blogs someone sent me, and
Mm,
it literally addressed Mahalven and Mahalini and how they came up with the word Mahalven and then just chose Mahalini, whereas in English, for example, gay and lesbian, lesbian has nothing to do with gay, the word itself, so it was very
yeah.
different. And I think this is the thing, as I can't comment on that personally, but I think what I would say is, again, it's language evolves. And I think for the Tamil queer community, it is an evolving process that's happening right now. And I think, if you as an individual disagree with the word and you don't want to use it, you don't have to use it, and you can use a word that you prefer. But I think, rather than just criticizing without providing a solution, I always say, if you have an alternative, suggest that and put that forward. If not, I think we just need to give our community a bit of time to actually evolve. Because we are talking about, like, these are very new things, right? Even in the Western world, LGBTQ plus is not actually as widely accepted as we think it is. In London, it may be, for example, but if you go outside London, it's not a thing young people can talk to about their parents or be out and open. And I think we have to understand that culturally, you can't just expect Tamil people to be like, there we go, we are going to be modern, we are going to be, and I think it's like equating the whole, being modern and being, I don't know, equal and treating everyone equally and being in a big cosmopolitan city. It's not
Mm,
easy. It's about finding the right terms when the time is right. And it's about the word usage as well. And I think, rather than being concerned with whether the word is right or wrong or, whether it's politically correct or not, I think, try to find, maybe do your own research and contribute to the evolving vocabulary in whatever way you can, and have these conversations with people who are actually part of the Tamil LGBTQ plus community, and ask them how they feel about it. And as I said, I mean, as we discussed before as well, it should be something that comes from the community. I don't think anyone else has a say in it. And it's good to like analyze these things and notice these things, but I don't know. I always find it like, I don't know, because I don't think it's my place to make these decisions or have an opinion on this. But I always say,
mm,
like, if someone wants to use a word, they can use it. And, if, let's say, a lesbian woman doesn't want to use the word mahalini, she has every right not to use it. And she can use a word that she thinks is more appropriate for her.
mm,
But I don't know if it has any use analyzing as an outsider outside the community, saying this is right, this is wrong, this is patriarchal, politically this is right. You know what I mean? Like, I think we have to allow some space and time for things to evolve and for people to find. And people are only starting to use these words in Tamil, so I think it takes some time. We're talking about a few years or maybe decades for people to actually say, okay, you know what? I think this word is more appropriate now.
mm.
Maybe I don't want to use this word anymore. And as we see with Nambi Nange, 50 years ago, that was the word they used, and then now they don't use it anymore. Now Mahal and Mahalini, and in 10, 15 years time, it will be maybe different words that they will use. And I think, yeah, with time, it will like maybe not solidify, but like maybe more prominent words will appear, and people might identify with
Misogynistic history or a patriarchal history have been reclaimed or reappropriated by the community that were initially subjected to those terms in a negative way. So an
them.
example would be, a lot of hetero cis men used to call gay men sissy, right?
Right.
And now you have a section of the queer community, and specifically gay men, reappropriating that, right? And that has a patriarchal and misogynistic origin, because sissy
Mm.
is, yeah. So I was just using the word sissy as an example,
Yeah.
where it has a patriarchal and misogynistic history, and it was used to refer to gay men, um, because being gay was considered equivalent to being a woman,
Yeah.
and therefore had some sort of negative connotation to it. Now you have a lot of, so similarly, a Tamil lesbian woman who does not want to be called Mahalini can choose not to. In the alternative, if she considers it patriarchal and misogynistic, there may come a time where lesbians reclaim that word and being like, no, this is actually I get power from this word. I know the historical context that it comes from, but I'm going to defy those expectations and be a bigger, bolder version of myself using this word.
Yeah, amazing. Cool. Oh gosh, I think I've accidentally turned off comments. Okay, it should work now. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, and someone else asked in the previous session. So one of the questions was, how does one have conversations with their parents, Tamil parents, about being gay or being a lesbian or being a queer Tamil person? And the question also had another sub question about, how do you come out to your parents?
I think this is going to vary from context to context because like I'm weary of the idea of having to come out because this is going to depend on your financial circumstances, the kind of support network that you have. So I felt safe enough to actually speak to my parents about being queer. This may not be the case, and this is going to change the world. On top of that, it's also going to depend on the level of exposure into that conversation may take is that they may have find feel safe enough, you can speak to a family member that isn't necessarily your parents to kind of baby step your way into that conversation. Parents' reaction and then kind of determine how those conversations are going to go. But I definitely would want to make sure no one feels pressured to come out because they think that they need to follow some sort of timeline. I know that, some people will come out to their parents when they're like 11, 12, 13, which is excellent. Right. And other people will come out much later in life. And we're all socially conditioned in very different ways. And it's a constant process of constantly being conditioned in different ways. So you need to kind of understand that and then determine how that's going to guide your conversation with your parents.
Definitely. I think there is a lot of pressure for young people these days anyway, because even on YouTube and stuff, YouTube or TikTok, you will see a lot of videos of coming out. And it's like this big ta-da, look, I've come out now. And I think, as some people said, some people have the privilege to come out and many people don't. And I think, even as being an ally, we have to be very mindful of that and not feel like, pressure someone into coming out, because no one has to. And, it's something I thought as well, for the longest time, where I thought, but it's part of a process. You just do it, right? It's just a matter of now or later. And actually, it's only when, people actually told me, no, you don't have to come out. You don't need to ever come out if you don't want to. It's something that's personal preference. And there is so much expectation and pressure from society for someone to come out as well. And, we don't know what someone's personal circumstances are before they can come. But as you've said, the baby steps, I think it's really good to have these conversations at home and, educate our parents as well. Because when I talked to my mum about this as well, she was slightly asking, like, why are you talking to me about this all the time? And I'm like, wait and see. But, it's being able to have these little, even if it's in a jokey way, have the conversation first and then actually say, you know what, actually, this is something I need to talk to you about. But yeah, don't ever do it unless you want to do it. It's on your terms. and not because you feel pressured by anyone or social media, especially.
The other thing to note also is like there are a lot of Western LGBT organizations like the It Gets Better Project who portray a very particular narrative of what it's like to come out. But those organizations more often than not do not take into context uh, you know, culturally and linguistically diverse communities, Tamil communities, Muslim communities, and all the different intersections of identity. Because all of those
Yes.
identities have an impact on what your coming out experience is going to be like. So simply saying it gets better is actually not
Yeah.
appropriate all the time. And in that regard, I highly recommend that if you are in a situation where you're questioning or curious and you want to have discussions about being queer, that you seek out organizations that particularly tailor to your community. So if you're in Toronto, ASAP is a good organization, which is an AIDS South Asian organization speaking on various LGBT issues, and there are Tamil people that are involved with the organization that you can talk to. And similarly, I imagine there are organizations in London as well. And if you're in a rural area or in a particular place in Sri Lanka or in India that you don't have access to, we can point you to an organization that will be helpful. But that might be another good way to go about it, where you're actually connecting to people within your own community who have more of a nuanced understanding of what it's like to come out and be queer within that community to help you along the way.
Definitely, definitely. Amazing. Yes, that's very true. And I think, yeah, as part of a future, project or something as well, is like, yeah, getting, all these, there are amazing Instagram pages out there as well, signposting people and stuff. And I think it's just, yeah, having access to these, information and where you can seek help or advice as well. Definitely. So Baron has asked, why don't you guys speak about dating, relationship experience of queer Tamils? There are lots of things to discuss about.
I can. What is there a specific question that they had? I mean, just more broadly speaking, dating as a Tamil person specifically is such a minefield to go through, even
Yeah.
as a hetero person. So adding that queer element just makes it that much more challenging.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's funny because I think the one challenge I would probably say for a lot of queer people within Tamil communities is if you're not dating another Tamil person, right? And they don't necessarily understand the family dynamics and the community dynamics of what it's like to be Tamil and what it's like to date within the Tamil community. That might be challenging. It's like, a lot of white people have this perception that, you date someone after like a couple of months, you can bring them home over for dinner and have chats with your parents. And that's not necessarily how it works. Like, a lot of
Yeah.
hetero people, cis people will date girls and guys for like years and their family will not know about it. And so similarly, a lot of those dynamics get imputed onto queer relationships as well.
Hmm.
Um,
Definitely. I think, yeah, it's very interesting because dating and stuff, it's very personal, generally anyway. But then also when it comes to the Tamil community, as you've said, like bringing someone home. If I brought someone home, that means I'm getting married to that person. Otherwise, there is
yeah.
no reason for me to bring another person into my family and introduce them, right? Like it's like this whole thing about like, yeah, it's very a lot more casual, bringing a partner to your introducing them to your family, bringing them to a family barbecue, but it's not the same. Like culturally, it's a lot more serious. And I think, yeah, as you've said as well, as a cis hetero person as well, like you could be dating someone for years, and then it's only until after engagement or until the proposal happens, you're like, oh, by the way, this is my partner, I'm going to get married to them. It's one of those things. But yeah, I think we have to be mindful of that as well. And I think, yeah, there was nothing wrong with talking about dating experiences or relationships. But I think, we still have to create a safe space for everyone to come out and talk about these things. Because
Yeah.
as Tamil people, regardless of your sexual orientation or gender identity, you don't talk about these things, right? Like you can't just, you're always worried about someone else knowing someone else who knows your mom and telling them about you as well. You can't openly talk about it. And for example, with my mom, I'm very open about my relationships, but like she would know I'm like dating someone, but she wouldn't know the details. She doesn't want to know the details because then, like, you know, she knows herself as well. Unless it's someone I'm going to marry, she doesn't want to know. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's none of her business. But it's also the fact that, you know, the minute she finds out there is someone, the questions start coming. Oh, so when are you going to introduce them to us? Oh, when are we going to meet this person? And, you know, how serious is it? And, you know, and these things, it's very exhausting for an individual to deal with in terms of like family and stuff. But, you know, also like another thing my mom always tells me is like, I'm always like very vocal. Like, I'm very happy to talk to anyone about my personal relationships. But my mom will
Mm.
be like, "Oh, don't do that because, you know, that auntie's going to find out and ask me questions and I don't want to answer these questions." And it's one of those things about like the network of moms or whatever and their pride and, you know, saving face and what the other people will say. Even if your parents are okay with that, because someone else, like, we are such a tight knit community that, you know, word will spread and then people don't want to be dealing with these questions. I think we have to be very mindful of that as well. We don't have that privilege like a Western person does, where I
Mm.
can just be like, oh yeah, by the way, that's my boyfriend or my girlfriend or my partner.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that gets amplified when you're a queer person because, you
Mm.
know, there's a further stigmatization of dating. Like I think, you know, when you think about love marriages and dating decades ago, it was quite controversial within the Tamil community, but now we've kind of
Yeah.
relatively moved past that. But that just being queer, forget the dating part, just being queer in the Tamil community is still a challenge for a lot of people. So exploring dating on top of that, I think is even you're dealing with, you know, stigma, privacy, secrecy, community talk, saving face for your parents, all these different issues. So it can be quite challenging as a Tamil queer person. The other thing that you're
Definitely.
also facing is that, you know, on one side you have the Tamil community posing barriers for you in terms of existing as a Tamil queer person. But on the flip side, in the community that you're going around, the community that you're engaging with, if you're in a place like London or Germany or Toronto or Australia, you can also face racism and discrimination from the queer community itself. And that's another issue. And then that gets amplified with colorism and shadism, you know, how dark you are. Even within the South Asian queer community, right? There's caste politics.
Yeah.
And so all like North Indians not dating South Indians, not dating Sri Lankan Tamils, all these kind of issues can come up. So it's a very complex minefield to navigate sometimes. And I think
Definitely. Definitely.
that's what makes it really challenging when you're occupying different spaces, where you're
Mm.
occupying, you know, the Tamil community space and then also a queer space. And the magic balance is trying to be queer in a Tamil community and Tamil in a queer community and being interchangeable and moving through those spaces really
Mm.
easily.
Definitely. And you know, like it's something that I mean, for me, I can only speak of London, for example. You know, I spent most of my student life in London, and you know, I've been out and about. I've been to all these places, hanging out everywhere, and you know, it's just so apparent. It's not very easy if you're a Tamil like queer person to go out there and you know start dating or even mix with people. Like an example I can give is like, for example, this was like back in my student days. I went to one of the well-known lesbian bars in London, right? And it's known like it's in Soho, and it's known to be very diverse and you know very cool and the hip place to be. And as you enter the place, physically, it's very visible how race works and how racism works. You've got,
Mm,
I'm going to say, the white people in one corner, like there on this side of the bar, but then you've got the brown people there, the black people over there, and it's very divided and segregated. And you wouldn't
mm,
expect that because you would think, as an outsider who's not exposed to these things, it's very easy to think, for example, oh, but you know, if you're a lesbian, it's just easy for you to get on with other lesbians. And you know, it's the whole stereotype of, oh, but you guys, you know, can bond over the fact that you're lesbians and ignorant things people say. And actually,
mm.
it's not that easy. It's not easy when you have to face racism when it's so, and it's very subtle, right? Like, I think recently there have been a lot of posts as well out that about like what
Sexual
is it,
racism.
sexual racism, literally, and you know people
Mm,
covering it up as preference, and you
yeah.
know a question. This is interesting. In my younger days of active dating, one question I was always asked was like, "What's your type?" And and I would always like describe people by their personality, about specific, literally physical attributes that I liked. But
Mm,
on the other side, the person, what they would always say is like, "I don't know, I can't, I could, if it comes to like blonde or brunette, I would always go with a blonde." And I'm like, but I don't have blonde or brunette hair. What are you talking about? Like, do you know what I mean? For them,
yeah,
the only
yeah,
option is amongst like a Caucasian, and within
mm,
that, they only see the brunette or the blonde. And for me, I was like always like baffled about it. I was like, what am I trying to say? And for them, they don't even see it as a problem because for them, it's a preference, and they like blonde girls, or and
mm,
things like that. And preference is a very people take it as like, oh yeah, but it's my preference. You can't tell me who I can like, who I
yeah,
can date. But actually, I think as Tamil people, I always say there is this unofficial hierarchy that we have, our parents have. If you don't date a Tamil person, that's fine, but you better come home with like an Indian person, a North Indian person. Okay, fine. If you
mm,
don't come home with a North Indian person, at least you better be coming home with a white person. And this
yeah,
hierarchy keeps going. And you do see that actually black people are at the bottom of your list, or not even on the
mm,
list sometimes. And one of my
mm,
friends, he's Jamaican, and he said he dated a girl, a Sri Lankan Tamil girl, and she said, but she was saying, "Oh, this is the hierarchy. I'm allowed to date a white guy first, and then this, and then that." And then I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know where you're going." She probably said black people are at the bottom of the list, and he said, "No, black people are not even on the list." And I was
yeah,
like, what the, you know what I mean? That's a big problem. And we never talk about it because we are like
mm,
self-righteous and we're like, no, but you don't understand. Or, but that's just
mm,
my preference. And I'm like, that's not that's racism, actually.
yeah.
Like,
Well,
and it's
anti-blackness
something that you need to
runs
address.
through the Tamil community quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
And you've seen a lot of posts about it and how Asian communities and Tamil communities and South Asian communities perpetuate anti-blackness.
Yeah.
Because I think in a lot of ways we try to lump ourselves with any kind of social solidarity movement with Black people, saying, "Oh, we all have similar experiences," but don't actually acknowledge or recognize how we ourselves perpetuate particular problems against Black
Yeah.
communities.
That's
But
very
like
true.
going back to the dating context, the flip side of that also is, you can also be fetishized for being Tamil or brown. Like you'll have people
Mm.
saying, "Oh, I love your chocolate skin," and you go through their dating history, and every single person that they've dated is a dark brown person, and that's also a different problem to kind of navigate and try to
Yeah.
extricate yourself from.
Yes, definitely. That's very true as well. And I think again on Instagram, the stuff you come across on Instagram. There was some guy messaging a bunch of like Tamil women about are you a lesbian or are you bi or something like that. And I'm like,
I
it's
saw
literally
that.
that actually the problem. And I'm like how the audacity? How dare you? You sat there
Mm,
at home and thinking, oh, I'm gonna drop this message. I'm gonna send a bunch of girls these messages because I think I can. And
mm,
that in itself is the biggest problem. I'm like, how dare you? Like literally, yeah, it's one of those things where this is the thing we need to, I think, actively. There is nothing you have to do where it's like a big revolution. It's just little things where you look around your own circle and change what you can change, and about yourself as well. Like if you like look at your like past relationships and people you've dated and who you would date, and be honest with yourself and actually say, would I date this person? If not, then why would I not? And explore that as well with your friends. And I think that
mm,
we can, contribute in that way as well, rather than, I don't know, you don't need to be out there protesting or anything like that, or
mm.
campaigning, but it's the little changes that we make here in daily lives as well.
100%. And I think, like, when we talk about preferences, one of my friends actually did a podcast discussing racial preferences within the
Mm.
dating sphere and specifically within the queer community. And, if it actually was a preference, you would see, the graph being all over the place because everyone would have different preferences. But everyone's preferences follows a very particular pattern, the way you highlighted. There's a hierarchy that becomes very evident. Everyone will hide it saying, "Oh, this is just my personal preference that I will date this person or that person or this type of person." But when you were to put all of that onto a graph, it follows a pattern of,
Mm.
people who are dark skinned, who are Black, always fall to the bottom. And then people who are cis-looking males fall to the top, masculine males. And this is obviously within London, Toronto, Sydney, these places. These dynamics are not applicable necessarily to Jaffna or Chennai. And they have their own different community challenges that I can't speak on because I don't date within that community or in that
Yeah.
context. But
Yeah. Great. Okay, so I'm going to read out some comments. I don't know. I don't want to mispronounce the username YHTM. Apologies, but so I feel like Tamils who don't use Tamil in their daily lives don't really try to know the root meaning of these words. They've also commented and made a few other comments. It's really important to not just post about these words, but how these words come about to represent these communities. And one more, and one should not try to literally translate English terms. It should make sense. I completely agree. Oh, there is one more comment. These Tamil terms are rarely used by people from Western countries, so I don't think they don't really think what it means. For someone from Tamil Nadu, some terms that you have posted doesn't make sense. Yes, I think this is the thing, right? It's the diversity that we have within the Tamil community, and yeah. I mean, what do you think about these comments?
yeah, I mean, like we kind of discussed this and tried to preempt this many times now, which is the Tamil language evolves in different ways in different contexts. So terms that are used even within Chennai are different depending on who you speak to. So certain gay men within Chennai have particular terms that they identify with, or they used to identify with, and now they no longer do. And then other sections of the community use different terms. And I think the main thing that we can say and kind of reiterate again is that it's not our job to police terms that queer people use. We may not use that to refer to other people if they don't want to be referred to that way, and that's fine. So if you don't like the word mahuvan or you don't like the word nambi, cool, we won't call you that. But there
Yeah,
are other people, other gay men who do identify with nambi or do identify with mahuvan, and I think it's important that we respect that's what they want to be called and call them accordingly. Similarly, like the word, like in the Western context of the word queer, I use the word queer a lot to refer to my identity because it's all encompassing and I think is a lot more flexible and fluid. Whereas older people do not like the word queer at all because it was used quite derogatorily historically. And so they find it quite offensive, whereas
yeah,
I don't. And a lot of younger people have reclaimed or reappropriated that word. And this is going to change constantly depending on which community that you're in, which context that you're in. So that's probably what I'd have to say. I think if there are people within that particular community that want to be referred to a particular way, then I think it's important that you respect that and use those terms. If other people do not like it, then do not use those terms with those particular people.
yeah, yeah. And I think also regarding the comment they okay, yeah. So regarding the comment about, people not knowing the root word and stuff like that, I
Mm,
think, yeah, again, it's one of those things where we have to actively make an effort to use these words in our daily vocabulary. Because like, even if I talk to my parents, I know for a fact that it's limited vocabulary that I use with my parents. It's all about food, going
mm,
out, and, like relationships, like communication, and that's it. I would not
mm,
talk to them about political things in Tamil, and even if I do, I don't use the appropriate term. I would explain it to them in a roundabout way, like in simple
mm,
Tamil, because we don't use those words. And I think, individually, I think what we can do is introduce those words to ourselves and to the people we know, and
mm,
actively try to use them. And I think that's the only way we can preserve, Tamil as well, but also,
mm.
actively use these words as well. I think, yeah, that would be my response to the comment as well.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, you may find that people just end up using Western words, even though they're Tamil words that have been created. Like, we have words for TV and telephone and things like that in Tamil, like tolakachi and whatever else. But I don't think I've ever used that word just talking about the TV to my
Yeah,
parents. So some words will naturally enter your vocabulary as you find it comfortable, and others definitely won't. It will just stay in the
yeah.
dictionary as a literal translation of an English word that exists, but no one will ever use it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Amazing. I think that's it for the questions for today. I just want to say, honestly, thank you because honestly, thanks to you, I've learned so much this month. When I started this off with you, I never thought this is what I was coming my way, right? And I remember you saying at the beginning as well when we started, you will get people who will disagree. You will get people, who will have a different opinion. And I was like, yeah, but whatever. Like I thought, yeah, this is going to be a fun thing, but it's just brought a lot of important issues within our community to the surface that we need to address. And for myself as an
Mm.
individual as well, I think I'm still learning and growing. And thanks to you, honestly, I'm going to give you all the credit because if it wasn't for you, this wouldn't have happened. This wouldn't have taken place. And, I wouldn't be half as active as I am now. And there is still a long way to go, in contributing to our Tamil community. And I always say, like, regardless of what your passions are, what do you believe in? For me, for example, I care about Tamil. It's all things Tamil. And for me, whatever issue it is, bringing it back to the Tamil community, making it relevant. And, it doesn't have to be the same way for you guys, but it can be a different way. You can find a way that works for you, find a cause that you are personally passionate about and talk about it. And I think, yeah, just be open minded. And Thinesh, honestly, thank you. Thank you for all your support as well. That's something I want to say as well. You've always been there as well. It's nice knowing that there is someone there, even though you live in Sydney, like all the way across somewhere else, and because of a time difference as well. But you've been there. I've always felt like, okay, if some shit came up, I could ask you for advice or I could talk to you about that. And I think that's great is having the support network, even though it's, like online, is having that support and having people there. And for that, I'm always forever grateful. And, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you. And obviously, I'm looking forward to more collaborations in the future.
No, similarly, it's been amazing working with you. Like, thank you so much for using your platform to amplify queer voices and connect with other queer people. I mean,
Mhm.
there's so many queer people that have reached out since starting this project with you. And we've been having chats about just all of the different experiences, some of which I've obviously shared with you already. So in
Yeah.
that regard, it's been really, really cool to kind of create a Tamil queer community in an online space through the beauty of language. So thank you so much for engaging with me and wanting to do this and responding to my various emails in the middle of the night. Hello?
Yes, amazing. Thank
Did
you
I
so
freeze?
much, honestly. Yes, I'm looking forward to, future projects. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to DM me or Tinesh directly as well. We'll be happy to answer any questions. And if in any way you can contribute to the community, if you have any project ideas as well, again, DM us. We're happy to do. And Tinesh is very gifted in designing posts as well. So thank you so much. That's another thing I was going to say and I completely forgot. I was like, all the designs that you kept making, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing, and I love it.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, it's probably very very late in Sydney at the moment, but thank you so much once again, and hopefully we'll reconnect soon.
Yep, 100%. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a lovely night, evening.
You too. Bye.
Bye.